Is Pendragon a progressive rock band?
A good question. Yeah, we are in terms of what people, commonly know as a progressive rock band. When people sort of talk about progressive rock, they talk about bands like Genesis, Pink Floyd, and it's kind of a reference point really that helps. Some bands get very kind of precious about it and they don't want to be known as a progressive rock band. But I mean really it's a lot of rot, If people know the kind of music you are, you stand a better chance of getting through to a potential audience. So, it's not a bad thing to be called, to be labelled really. So yes, I guess we are.
Do you like labeling the musical genres? If it's important that Pendragon is progressive rock band, isn't it better to call it a good rock band?
Again, I think it's kind of a reference point. It sounds really odd to sort of say that. Pendragon are a good rock band. When people know that we're a progressive rock, it sounds like you're deliberately leaving out progressive for the sake of some sort of unwritten credibility. I don't know. It seems very odd to do that. Like bands might be described sort of heavy metal. It gives people an idea of the kind of music they play. If you said they were soul, people wouldn't go and see them. So it kind of puts the bands in roughly the right kind of ballpark for the kind of audience they might attract. And so, therefore I don't really find it a particularly offensive thing. Heck, I do it all the time, I say, yeah, it's a soul band, it's a metal band, it's a kind of jazz band or whatever, so what's the big deal? As I said before, I think some bands get very precious about this. Look, we're not a progressive rock band and we stand by that. Well, load of nonsense. Of course they are. They just sort of pretend that they're more interesting than the other progressive rock bands out there and they don't want to be called progressive rock. It's very odd.
How did you start as a musician?
I think it started out by my mum playing a lot of music around me when I was really, really young. During the 60s there was a lot of music happening and my mum was really into a lot of stuff which was very varied. She liked stuff like the Beatles, Andy Williams, Scheherazade. She would play that classic Rimsky-Korsakov, that kind of classical stuff, and a lot of fairly current stuff as well. Like the Beatles, Andy Williams, that sort of thing. And it just kind of went over and over and over in my head. So I kind of got into music, and never went back on it. It was kind of the first sort of stuff we started playing. That I started playing as a musician was kind of rock and roll stuff and heavy metal. This is the kind of music that I was into. The first sort of music I was into was that my mum wasn't playing. Was stuff that is now it's called glam, but it wasn't called glam then. It was just sort of T-Rex, Slade. The Sweet and bands like this. I thought this was just incredible, this kind of pop music, and this influenced me a lot. And from there, it kind of went on to harder rock stuff like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and sort of by default, I think it went sort of down a progressive path after that. I think you'll always have people that. That were part of your life that, are your idols. For the first time ever last year, I went to see Steely Dan, who are a band that I've loved for years and years and years. They've done very little touring, and the chance to see them came up. And I went to those concerts. I went with Peter, actually, because he really likes them as well. My feeling was very much of kind of, as a fan, Steely Dan, it is really Donald Fagen and Walter Becker up there on stage. It's very awe-inspiring, and the idol thing still kind of does lurk around in there. You know, when you think about people that have kind of been really part of your life, and people like Tony Banks, you know, as a musician, really. You know, you think, I wrote all those songs going back years and years. It was very much a part of your life, and so you'll always kind of hold people like that in high esteem, really. All right, well.
Was Pendragon always Nick Barrett's band?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I don't really sort of consider it, you know, my band now. Because I rely quite heavily on the other members of the band, if not just in the sort of songwriting area. I rely on them for just taking the blame, I think, for a lot of the stuff. You know, it's very hard to kind of just say, well, this is mine, and I sort of stand or fall by it. As far as I feel now, you know, we all stand or fall by it, you know, and I don't take more of the blame than anyone else. You know, so I can blame Fudge for having a duff album as much as blaming myself for it. I think in the early days, we were perhaps looking for something more, and when you're in that kind of early days experimental time, and you don't really know what you're looking for, you're fairly directionless in the way that you're writing, the way you're performing on stage and everything. That responsibility between the band members is shared a lot more. I think it really kind of became noticeable, I think, when John Barnfield was in the band, and we wrote a lot of material together, and that's, I think, the first time I sort of felt that there was something here that really gels. And I think as people left, the sort of burden of carrying on with the, you know, well, who's going to write the next album then? Well, you know, I don't think, it just kind of, people left before they had a chance to write anything. I suppose it just ended up being me, you know, just doing the writings.
Jewel. I read many reviews calling this album the real shining jewel amongst progressive rock albums. Isn't Jewel now, I mean, comparing with other works of Pendragon?
I don't know, it's so long since I've played that album, I can't really remember what it sounds like, but you've got to be very careful with this sort of thing, because nothing irritated me more than hearing Phil Collins run down the early Genesis albums, because those albums were part of not just my life, but a lot of people's lives. I mean, they really were. And then to hear the person that was involved in creating them criticise them so much was kind of not good to hear. So we being aware of this kind of thing, with the Jewel, I think the last time I heard it was, I think when we played in Tremonti in Italy, probably about 7 years ago, and someone was playing it in the background. And I remember, I hadn't heard it for years and years, and I remember hearing it and thinking, blimey, that actually sounds really good. I like something about this. There's a kind of naivety that is in this record, a kind of a, I don't know, just you know, 4 guys in a band and musicians going to the studio and just recording this thing, and without, you know, a lot of experience, and this is what it threw out, and it's, you know, I think it came out quite well, and you know, it sounds good. You listen to it and you do think, you know, bass drum's a bit loud and guitar's a bit naff here. You hear that sort of thing, but you know, you've got to look beyond that really and think, no, forget that, it doesn't matter. You think about the kind of soul of this, you know, the soul of this is okay, you know, it's all right.
The World album is also a beginning of your cooperation with Simon Williams and your famous, beautiful booklets, covers of your albums. How it all started?
What, the music or the booklets?
Both.
Both. Well, I mean, we consider really that the world was the kind of starting point for Pendragon, in a way. It kind of was a time when, I mean, we had no sort of image as such. And with that album, suddenly we sort of did have an image, and we also, the music seemed to have kind of more integrity, and all for the kind of the reasons which you wouldn't think of. For example, we thought that we weren't going to really get a major record deal, so we thought we'd just write music that we enjoyed writing, and let's do that and see what happens. So we just wrote music that, you know, we liked. And the thing with Simon Williams was, I think I stopped at a motorway service cafe, and well, they were selling CDs, and saw this CD, this one CD I saw on the wall there, and sort of caught my eye, and thought, well, that's really interesting artwork on that. I went over and had a look, and it was Simon Williams' work on the EMI Classic Experience albums. And looked inside, it got the name, saw it was EMI, so when I got home I phoned up EMI, and they gave me the number of Simon's studio, and phoned him up and said, you know, can you do our album covers cheaply? Because we got no money. And I thought he was going to be, I thought he may be all kind of difficult. Look, I only do stuff that I really believe in, and be very artistic, but he was fantastic. And I still think now he's one of the most professional people you could ever work with. I mean, he's just an amazing person to work with. He really is. I mean, you know, you give him these ideas and you think, I don't know how the heck he's going to put this together. And then he does. He just gets it in a way that you think, there you go. Because his perspective is so excellent. He can put things in a depth that they still manage to sort of stand out. And automatically, sort of overnight, we suddenly kind of had an image, and that was this kind of artwork, and then the music had this integrity because it was just stuff that we'd written because we liked it, and you know, a new kind of Pendragon was sort of born out of that, and things really changed after that. It was a complete turnaround. It gave us suddenly everything was sort of right. It felt right. You know, the music felt right. The sort of image of what we were doing felt right. It was a very strange time. It was good. Yeah, we thought this is the way to go. We've sort of found it now.